Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for coming this afternoon. We're very excited to be here this afternoon. I'm Anita Cortez, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm with the Office of Undergraduate Research and Creative Inquiry here on campus. We're a brand new office, and to kick it all off, we are starting with a week of awareness activities and panels and discussions. And we hope that you will have opportunity throughout the week to engage in discussion and dialogue about what is undergraduate research and creative inquiry and how can we all be involved in it. So thank you for coming to our first event of the week. I will, at this point, tell you just a little bit of what we have coming up. Tomorrow we have a panel on undergraduate research ethics. That will be in the Hemisphere Room at 3 o'clock. And if you haven't already got a calendar of events, there are some out on the table out front. It's also on the K-State webpage. So if you have an opportunity to come or to encourage your colleagues or your students, both graduate and undergraduate students, so that all of us at the university are getting involved in the discussion of research, of ethics, of what it means to be young, curious, discoverers, and innovative thinkers. On Wednesday, we have a number of events, and they will be held in the Union Courtyard, which might seem an odd place to have some events around research, but the whole purpose is to be visible and to make students aware of us and the opportunities out there without having to make an effort to go to a particular room and find their way, but just to come by and dip in and sample what's happening. So that's what we're doing on Wednesday. On Thursday at 3 o'clock, we are having an open house in Wildcat Landing so that you all can see our new offices and our student space, and we hope you can join us on Thursday and have a little party with us. And we will also be including the other offices in Wildcat Landing, the Office of Honor and Integrity Systems and Teaching and Learning Center, and the International Technology Center as well. So please come over on Thursday and have a little refreshment with us in the afternoon. With that, I would like to invite Provost Mason to come forward, and she will introduce our guests for the afternoon. Provost Mason.
Well, I want to compliment Anita and her staff for putting together this undergraduate research and creative inquiry awareness week. Lots of activities, lots of things going on, and just the first of many activities that will be brought to you by this office over the next year as we increase the awareness of undergraduate research and creative inquiry on our campus. So thank you, Anita, very much. To kick this Awareness Week off, it seemed most appropriate to have a talk from our new Vice President for Research, Karen Burg. We anticipated her arrival a great deal. I see a couple of members of the search committee that are here today. We're very pleased to have Karen Burg on our campus to assist us in raising the awareness of research in general, creative inquiry, and theme one of our K-State 2025 strategic plan, that of research, creative activity, scholarship, and discovery. Karen comes to us from Clemson University, where she had a number of different roles. She most recently was serving as the interim vice provost and dean of the graduate school there. She has been described as a transformative leader who will guide us as K-State tries to reach the goal of a top 50 public research university. And She has already shown that transformative thinking and learning with us as she has been involved in discussions and retreats with our deans and our associate deans for research, and I'm very appreciative of that. She's also a professor of chemical engineering, as her first slide shows, and her area is in the area of bioengineering. Her research has centered on absorbable polymers, biofabrication, and tissue engineering, and I'm excited that she's able to come and talk to us about really igniting passion for learning through undergraduate research, which she has been very involved in at Clemson. Burg held the Hunter Endowed Chairship, a professor of bioengineering at Clemson University, and directed the Institute of Biological Interfaces of Engineering. She also served as Clemson's interim vice provost for research and innovation. So you see she brings a great deal of energy and experience at the cabinet level for these activities. She earned her bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from North Carolina State and her master's and doctoral degree in bioengineering from Clemson. And therefore, I said she had many different roles in Clemson University. So would you join me in welcoming Dr. Burg as she talks to us about igniting the passion for learning through undergraduate research. Thank you, Dr. Burg.
So I don't know, Provost Mason, should I be concerned that members of the search committee are here, or am I being reevaluated?
Davey, what do you think?
So I do want to say a big thank you. I'm thoroughly impressed that A, there's an office that is dedicated to this, and B, that there's a week devoted to creative inquiry and research. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I fear not, I'm not going to talk for 60 minutes as billed. I was going to give some general thoughts, and it's mainly going to be reflecting on some of my own experiences. And it's not with the eye of imposing my experiences on you. It's simply sharing some of the opportunities I've had and some of the initiatives I've been involved in, because I think it is sort of a starting point for really digging into the potential here and also what is already ongoing here. So there are many fine programs already ongoing. So it's not meant to detract from that point. So with that, I'm going to forge ahead. First, I do want to ask, how many students do we have? Carrie, I know you're representing. Okay, and then how many are undergraduates, if you can leave your hands up? Okay, so a couple, so that's good. It really was intended for, I've put some thoughts in there that are specifically toward you, the students, and then some thoughts that are toward us, the faculty and administrators. So with that, we'll launch ahead. So I always enjoy sort of thinking about, what does RSCAD mean? Research, scholarly, and creative activity and discovery. And so you can think of it in a number of ways. Obviously critically examining ideas in your field, but it can be ideas that are futuristic, ones that are out in the future. It can also be re-examining ones in the past. And that's always, sort of a very important point, I think, because, we don't want to repeat bad ideas. We don't want to, as I always say, reinvent triangular wheels. We want to move forward in a good way. And so we need the continuum of people that are looking both backwards and those that are looking at the current place, and then those that are looking forward as well. And so there's this very interesting mix of examination of ideas. I like to think it's like a logic game. RSCAD is like a logic game. So the example I usually use is thinking outside the box. If you have two people playing chess, 5 games were played, each won 3 games. So logically, one would say there's a typographical error in that. That's not possible. And so what it requires is thinking at it from a different angle. So not thinking that they're playing each other. They're playing other people would be one option. Or perhaps they locked heads in one of the games. And so that's the idea behind being an RSCAD enthusiast and expert, is being able to think from a direction that isn't the typical direction. And so that's obviously how we'd like our students to be, is thinking from a 360 type of angle, or circle in that case. And so I'd like to actually make the case that the sooner we do that, the better. So really, state land grant institution, you'll hear me say ad nauseum, that we are here to serve people. And we are here to very much serve people by creating individuals that have a lot of knowledge but who know how to apply that knowledge. It's not just knowledge contained in their heads, it's knowledge that can be translated to community and to people. I mean, that is the land-grant mission. And so that very much centers on this ability to integrate education in the classroom with education outside the classroom. And it should be seamless, really should be, again, a continuum. So there are many other questions, depending on your field, what causes a disease, what's the community attitude, how did people think then, how do they think now, why is this useful, why is it not useful, and you can go on and on and on naming questions, big, small, seemingly insignificant, seemingly quite significant questions that all serve as the foundation for very good RSCAD projects and also for education. I also like to use the analogy that it's like a puzzle. So this is for the students in particular, although it bears well to think about it as a faculty mentor too, that entering into this process is as though you've been handed a big pile of puzzle pieces, and you don't necessarily know if it's complete. So maybe you have 3 puzzles, but you don't know if you have a complete 3 puzzles. You may be missing pieces, and you probably are missing pieces. And you may have extra pieces, superfluous pieces from other puzzles. And that's what this whole method of inquiry is about. You're trying to put together, you've been told you're supposed to focus on the Wildcat purple puzzle, but yet you have all these other pieces that are interfering. And so your job is to figure out can I put enough of these pieces together and sort of connect the dots to be able to determine what the picture is in that purple puzzle. That's very much the mindset of somebody involved in creative discovery and research. So having said that, let me give you a little bit of personal background, my involvement. I am truly quite passionate about research and very passionate about undergraduate research. I served for the past 3 years as the interim graduate dean, and guess where our graduate students came from? They were undergraduates. And so guess what? This was a very, very important activity to be involved in. For 15 years as a faculty member, I was involved with undergraduate research, but it really started before that. It started when I was in high school. I sat next to a young lady whose father was the chair of the pharmacy department at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so we were talking and we became very, very good friends, and she said, my dad was looking for, a helper in the lab to mix up media. It was a cancer lab. They were focused on that, and they needed some help. And I was actually a chemistry major. I'd been accepted at UNC for my first year as a chemistry major, and so I was going to be on the campus, so I was so excited. She made a personal connection for me, and I ended up working in that lab as a laboratory assistant. That was my first entree into cancer research. I had no idea I would later become a cancer researcher. And so I learned so many things. What I don't want is for every high school student to have to sit next to somebody whose father is the chair of the department. We should be proactive in advertising opportunities and generating opportunities. It shouldn't be something where you just stumble upon it. We should be very, as faculty members and mentors and administrators, we should be creating those opportunities and really seeking out people to fill those opportunities. So the picture on the left is the old well at Chapel Hill, on the Chapel Hill campus. That was my first experience. After that, I was one of those people, I would rather have eaten a large bag of nails than talk to a professor. The thought of going and saying, oh my goodness, do you have something that I could work on in your lab? That would never have entered my brain, my pea brain. That would not have entered it. And so I opted into, we had a great career center. I had moved on to NC State at this point, North Carolina State, which had an engineering focus, and there was a great career center. And so the less intimidating method for me was to go and sign up for an interview for a summer internship. So I ended up doing that rather than working throughout the year, in a laboratory environment. So I ended up with summer internships. So it was very interesting to me, particularly in hindsight. You don't realize these things are happening as they occur often, but in hindsight, I look back and I think about my time. The Research Triangle Park was in North Carolina. I worked for a chemical company there. I also worked for the Environmental Protection Agency. These were times where I learned about titration. I learned about analyzing plastic materials. I learned about the effect of chemicals on ozone. I learned about mathematical modeling that was going on with the EPA. And all of that enhanced my progress through some of what would have been my nightmare classes like organic chemistry. I was a chemical engineer. So I had all these chemistry classes that I had to get through, and unbeknownst to me, these experiences over the summer were helping me understand my classes better and how those equations related. Without those, I think I would have been a giant mess. I think I would have dropped out, not really understood what the purpose was to these theoretical, in my mind, theoretical equations that were being thrown at us over time in an engineering curriculum. Philip Morris, yes, I worked for a cigarette producer. And what happened there? I learned about process control. Again, a class that was highly complicated to me. I was not a stellar classroom student. And so to be able to see the effect of process control in action and to see a machine that had all these specifications that had to be set and why they were set at certain levels, and then relate that back to what I learned back on our Raleigh campus, that was incredible. Suddenly I understood what I was learning in class. I remember one of the most fascinating things was, a farmer would bring in a big bale of tobacco, and sometimes there were all kinds of other things wrapped in it. Trash, little pieces of trash, wire, you name it. Well, there were detectors on the line that could optically detect, it was programmed in, what the optical detection wavelength should be of a tobacco leaf, a certain type of tobacco leaf. And a puff of air would suddenly be emitted if something traveled underneath the detector that wasn't matching that wavelength. Fascinating in my introduction to sensors and optical technology. All of this played back into my career. And again, it was a hindsight reflection that made me realize this. So I then moved to involvement as a mentor. So for 15 years, I have not been without an undergraduate, at least one undergraduate in my care. That remains the same today, and it has been fantastic. I tend to, probably because of my own experiences, I tend to look for the non-4.0 students. I tend to look for the diamonds in the rough. I tend to look for the people that are struggling a little bit in their classes and who have what I call street smarts and will be able to really engage, and it will help them, as it helped me, to have these types of experiences. So my involvement, as a junior faculty member, I directed a research experiences for undergraduates program. For those of you familiar with the National Science Foundation, that's typically a summer program, doesn't have to be, but typically it is. I learned immersion by fire. There are all kinds of logistical things not related to science and engineering that one has to worry about. Dorm rooms, sheets being changed on a regular basis, and food plans, parking passes, and so forth. I would do things very differently if I went back and ran that one again. That was focused in my own discipline. So these were biomedical engineers who came from different parts of the country. What I learned there was what a great thing to have other students experience my home institution and then go back and then consider applying to my home institution for graduate school. And so that, to me, was quite a learning experience. I just finished, in partnership with Tim Burg, who's sitting right there, a second round as a director of a research experience for undergraduates program. We finished in August, just before we hopped in the car to drive out here. And so that was a wonderful experience, and I'm going to speak to some of that activity in a little bit more detail, just to give you an idea of some of the things that one can do, big or small, related to undergraduate research programs of that type. I also served as a co-director of a National Institutes of Health program that was geared toward non-biomedical engineers. So these were not people in the discipline. And the point there, and again, I'm using this as a general example, of training people to understand other disciplines, not trying to convert them to, the goal wasn't to convert every student to be a bioengineer. That wasn't the goal at all. The goal was to get, for example, mechanical engineers or chemists or communications majors excited about biomedical engineering so that they could think in their mind, how does this relate to my field? And wait a minute, this expands my opportunities. Now I have a totally different area that I know quite a bit about, and boy, that expands my career opportunities. So that was the purpose of that. And then through the 15 years, again, I've never been without either a creative inquiry team, which is a combination of graduate students and undergraduates, or independent researchers. They are just fun to be around. That's all there is to it. I would like to postulate or present to you the idea that, yes, mentoring can be as simple as, I have a project for a student over the course of the semester, but it can also be an opportunity to springboard to other types of activities for which you may have no idea when you begin that you have interest and talent. So for example, and again these are just two personal examples, our team became very involved as we were running an REU program, Research Experience for Undergraduates program. We also put in place an IRB, had IRB approval, Institutional Review Board approval, so that we could essentially test the students who were participating, the undergraduates who were participating when they came in and when they left the program, so that we could determine certain things about them. We were very interested. We were working on our team. We had engineering and science education enthusiasts, and so we were very interested in knowing what is it that makes someone consider their research identity. What causes them to mold a research identity? And then how does that perception, in other words, how do they perceive themselves as a researcher? And then how does that perception influence whether or not they're going to participate? And so I'm distilling it down into one slide, and I'd be happy to go into all kinds of detail on the data behind this. But one interesting point that we found was that engineers, and I'm an engineer, so I say this, we're pretty cocky. We do science, we do engineering, no problem, we do it all. And so for our engineers who were participating in our program, it was very much a mixed identity. It was a combination of the two. Whereas we had scientists who were participating in the very same program, and they saw science as the basis for their research identity. They did not see engineering. They saw engineers as widget makers. And they felt confident that they now understood, and they had the potential to have an engineering identity, but this wasn't what made up research in their mind. And so it was very interesting because you have two very different populations of students all working together, all hearing the same thing, but all having a very different perception. And therefore, as mentors, we have to react to that and know how to create a nurturing environment for all of them. So again, one example of a whole field that we were able to get into because of having these opportunities with undergraduate research. Second example that we have become very involved in, and again I'm very enthusiastic because guess where the undergraduates come from? They come from the K-12 system. So again, it's a continuum, and we must worry about all points along the continuum. So an opportunity very naturally arises with undergraduates who are working usually in close proximity and together with graduate students and faculty mentors. There's opportunity to translate those ideas to the K-12 community. And so this, I'm a big fan of doing this in a formal manner. Again, IRB approvals in place and having undergraduates assist graduate students. I've actually required my graduate students to have this as a formal part of their thesis or dissertation. They write it up. It's a scientific chapter in their thesis or dissertation. It's publishable. It's presentable. I pictured here, Science Scope is a magazine that's actually what I call the practitioner magazine. This is a journal of the National Science Teachers Association. We spend a lot of time as faculty philosophizing with one another about, these are interesting ways people learned a lot, blah, blah, blah. But what we need to also do is make sure that the teachers in the classrooms, we're working with them, they're giving us feedback and saying, well, this works, doesn't work. And so Science Scope is an example of a place where one can publish, and it is an audience of teachers who read that. In other words, they are looking at that journal to be able to find modules to put in their classroom. And so much of this work we've actually done collaboratively with teachers because, again, for me to have the arrogance to say, I know what teachers want, let me tell you what you want, that's ridiculous. So it's very much a partnership. So there's all kinds of potential. The undergraduates involved in this, again, it's the mindset that it's a continuum. And so land-grant mission, you're learning, but you're learning with a purpose. And if you don't understand the purpose and you're not exposed to the purpose, then you really missed a large part of that equation and that mindset. So let's loop back to K-State 2025. Hopefully that gives you an appreciation, a little bit of my background and personal interest. That is why I was extremely excited to see that our plan now, but at the time it was your plan when I interviewed. K-State 2025 included so many pieces that really reflected what I just said, which is the continuum. So theme 1 is RSCAD, and so that was abundantly clear. There's a focus on research, scholarly, and creative activities and discovery. But theme 2, undergraduate educational experience, both of those themes spoke very much and very directly to the point that there should be integration of education and meaningful research. And again, it should be seamless. It should be not just complementary, but it should just be a natural fit. That is what we do, is we give people practical practical experience, and we give them the tools that they need in the classroom to really be able to execute on the practical experience. So this is a Wordle. I'm a fan of Wordles. And so this basically describes many words that I call it an R-scatter. We would want our students, our R-scatters, to have. So, you know, everything skills, patience, working with people, communication. They need to be resourceful. They should be able to think their way out of a box. That's the way I describe critical thinking, you know, think your way out of a box. Problem solvers, diligence, they should know how to cooperate. On and on it goes. We could have made a Wordle the size of, you know, the flat screen at the stadium or much larger. But if you want to get into it, I mean, that's all very well sort of philosophically thinking about that, but if you want to look at the literature, there's an enormous body of literature that talks about, you know, why do we want these attributes? Why is this important? And so as you browse through the literature, you can see that students really do benefit from interdisciplinary collaboration. And so that means, you know, from an RSCAD experience, it's very difficult not to have an interdisciplinary experience. And so you might say, well, I have one student in my lab, but guess what? They're going to be relying on people in other programs. They are very resourceful. Oftentimes students are the glue that, you know, hold projects together, and they're the ones that actually forge new projects in many cases. And so it's really important that piece, that they have those. And then shared learning, which again is working on a team and having those interdisciplinary experiences as well, that allows students to really participate and take ownership. I've always been amazed looking at my own newbie researchers, where they started, very shy, introverted in their shells, and then at the end of as little amount of time as a semester, all of a sudden, you know, very confident in asking questions, no concern about, you know, the whole, oh no, it's a faculty member, I couldn't possibly ask a question, no concern about asking somebody in a different field, different background. We've emphasized to them, you need to ask questions. There is no dumb question. You need to ask, you need to ask, you need to ask. That's simply, you know, the sign of being a good thinker and creative problem solver is you're going to ask when you don't understand. You're going to ask, you're going to ask. Why else? So there's some other things. There are very few introductory research programs that exist. And so again, I go back to this mindset or this idea that the sooner we expose students to RSCAD, the better. And so the freshman year, sometimes that's not, I mean, it's definitely not the typical time for students to get involved. It's not the time that a faculty member gets really excited about getting a student involved. We tend to be more selfish as faculty members and say, oh, I want somebody who's fully trained and they're going to help me because it's all about me. And, you know, that's fine. I mean, that's one mindset, and, you know, not bad to have a certain number of, you know, individuals who are at that stage. But it is so much better, you know, as far as long-term thinking, to allow a little bit of exposure to an RSCAD activity early in the career, before the mindset has set in, the mindset of the discipline has set in. So the sooner people are exposed to things outside their discipline, just to a small amount, the better. That would be what I would claim. The other thing is perceptual barriers. I've heard this time and time again. You know, I was guilty of, I'm afraid to talk to the professor. Then also, and I realize I've spent a lot of my career with underrepresented minority students, and that group of individuals in particular, I've heard again and again, I don't see anyone that looks like me in the lab, and I'm going to feel isolated. And that's actually, you know, something they're very direct about sharing with me, and that's a perception, and it's one that we have to work to get beyond. That you know, that there's a group and there's support and you will be part of a team. But if that's the perception, that is the reality that we deal with. And so there's literature to show that often prevents students from jumping into an RSCAD type of opportunity because they have that perception that they will be isolated. Literature also suggests that, you know, the next thing is if a student feels isolated, then they're going to perform poorly. That's just good common sense. That you know, they're not going to do well because they're going to be focused on feeling isolated, and again, it just is a downward spiral if we don't take that into consideration. Also, lack of research credentials. Again, that idea of not taking somebody on who's a freshman means that they now travel through life without having those experiences, and when they hit junior or senior year, they are competing against the wide world. And the wide world, people are starting more and more in high school to get these kinds of experiences. So if we're not opening up opportunities for early stage students here at K-State, we are putting them in a severe disadvantage when they start competing for opportunities elsewhere. Because again, it's having recommendations, being able to talk about experiences, and being able to talk about the RSCAD experience as well. So I wanted to focus, I mentioned to you the last REU that I was involved in up until a month ago, and it was attached to a research grant that we had. It was an interdisciplinary research grant from the National Science Foundation, the Emerging Frontiers in Research and Innovation, multidisciplinary grant, and NSF gave us the opportunity to apply for what they called an REM/RU. They love acronyms in that federal government. So Research Experiences and Mentoring Program, which had to have a required REU, Research Experience for Undergraduates program. And so we set that up. It was at 2 universities, and so one thing I felt strongly about was that we would have the students experience engineers from my home institution would experience a life sciences experience at another university. Similar life science students would experience engineering. And so they traveled as a pack from university to university. They spent half the time at my home institution, half the time at the collaborating institution to get the best of both worlds. And it was a complicated, multi-layered type of program. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I wanted to give you enough of a backdrop to understand some of the reactions that we got to this. It was what we called a shadowing or a lightweight program, and so we purposely looked, again, our focus was on underrepresented minority students. 31 of our students were underrepresented minorities. 1 was underrepresented. So in science, technology, engineering, and math, ladies are underrepresented. And so we wanted to focus on that. We also wanted to choose those students who were not the rock stars of the classroom. So we purposely sought out, and as I know people often thought we were odd, saying, we'd like to discard the 4.0 students, and we'd like to hone in on, around the 2.7 to 3.0, somewhere in there type of range, and also got, information from big sisters, big brothers, from mentoring programs about their, enthusiasm and, ability to what I call stick-to-itiveness type of things. And so that was a focus. So overall, 32 undergraduates, 7 disciplines represented. The minority was biomedical engineering. We focused really heavily on other disciplines, 8 graduate student mentors, and again, 2 universities. So that's the backdrop. And so the students had a 1-semester shadowing program, and they were paired with graduate student mentors, and we had professional development opportunities throughout the semester, and we had meetings, regular meetings with faculty, graduate student mentors, and undergraduates. And so we had this network, and then we had a big celebration at the end of each semester. So the students were exposed to 1 semester's worth of shadowing, and so they assisted for 1 credit, and it was a graded credit, which was really important to these students who, remember, are borderline, and they're at the point where we're going to lose them, if they're not pulling their socks up in their classes. So they got 1 credit for abiding by all the rules and being enthusiastic participants, and we had, a list of criteria, what you must do to participate in this. It was a research credit class, and they assisted. So it essentially amounted to 3 hours per week. So it was a really low toe in the water type of approach. And that we felt would be enough. We didn't want something overwhelming, the same type of project you would have for somebody who was a senior, where you have a full-blown project. That would be really overwhelming at this point. These were largely first semester sophomores that we were working with. We wanted something enough to whet their interest, get them in a network, and make them hungry for more. And that's exactly what happened. And so I listed the quote here. The students always email me during the program and after the program, and this one, and a similar type of message: "You've truly changed my life for the better, as well as personally assisted me to get to the next level in my college career." This was a young man whose family was military, and he openly expressed he had no idea, and his family had no idea, what to do other than a military career. And so this was all new to him. An undergraduate career was new to him. He's now applying to graduate school. I could not be more delighted with that. And this is representative. And I know it's representative of the students you've worked with as well. I know you have your own stories in your heads about that. Many of the students of the 32, I'd say over 3/4 were first generation. And so very new, no support network at home to be able to say, here's where you should go. further observation, it was interesting because each student, we asked them to sort of give a nutshell sentence to describe, what the program meant to them, or what the experience, the RSCAD experience meant to them. And each student had a different angle. It was neat to see all the different ways in which different students had been affected. So the first one addressed the point that, I didn't know how to connect in, so I felt like you had to know somebody to do that. And so they were, excited that people were actually actively looking. So that's, what I want to impress on us. We need to be actively looking for individuals and presenting those opportunities, not, sort of thinking in our heads, oh, if an undergraduate walks our way, we'll offer something. The traditional, what we would have expected to think in other ways, take multiple routes. And we emphasized what critical thinking was, so this wasn't us making up quotes. They actually knew what critical thinking was and felt that, yes, I learned to think critically and evaluate things and make up my own mind, yes, no, and realized it was okay to have debate and discourse. Other things that the network, I mentioned that we had regular meetings with faculty members, graduate student mentors, and undergraduates, and this was great because we all felt great camaraderie, and by the end of each semester, again, our undergraduate researchers were right in the mix, debating and saying, no, I don't think so, how about this, or pulling something from the literature, which is exactly where we want them to be. Transpose that into a class. Those are important skill sets that can be used directly and should be used directly in a classroom environment as well. So those were, two of many, many examples. I also wanted to share an example of, again, just sort of to give you an idea of different types of opportunities. This is a young lady who started with me moons ago as an undergraduate researcher, and she was one of those ones that would not have sought me out. We had a recruitment program at the university that was largely focused on, again, women and underrepresented minorities, particularly for engineering. And so this office, there was a Pied Piper of students who ran this office, and she noticed Cheryl. Cheryl was very much an introvert, was a breadwinner in her home, was first generation, was from the rural part of the state, and so had all the things stacked against her, didn't have a 4.0 GPA. I didn't even look at her GPA, which she reminds me of now, and I wasn't even conscious of that. The director brought over this very enthusiastic young lady who was clearly, very shy, quiet, but clearly had a gleam in her eye and was excited. And so I offered her a position for a semester, said, let's work on a project together. And so we did, and this was in the early days where I wasn't pushing paper. I was actually in the lab and working side by side and with my graduate students. And so at the end of the semester, we said, well, there's a research experience for undergraduates opportunity here at the university. She was not the type who would have, she very much relied on her family support and did not want to leave the greater university area because her family was located, 4 hours away in the rural part of the state. There's no way she would have gone anywhere else. And so we encouraged her to apply for the program. She participated in that. And then the director and I double-teamed her ad nauseum, as we should all do with students, and said, so have you thought about a graduate, a master's? And she about fled down the hall and out of the state the first time we mentioned that, and we just kept doing this, repeating it. She went on to do a master's, she went on to do a PhD, and it was just a gradual progression during the master's. How about a PhD? And then she did a postdoc. She's now at Yale School of Medicine doing a postdoc, and she was just last week, I was on the phone with her, she was offered a tenure-track position at a research institution. I can't say enough things about this young lady. She is a delight and absolute rock star, but she wasn't one of those people that would have sprung out on the page in front of you, and she certainly wasn't a person who would have showed up in your office and said, I'd like to do a research project. The world would have lost an enormous asset had we not proactively reached out, had the director not proactively reached out and said, hey, I can find something for you. So message being, we need to be proactive in finding our students. So what we determined, some of the lessons learned from that, not everybody wants to get involved with an REU program. These are massive programs. Certainly you don't want to all direct them and deal with a lot of these headaches, but I would say that we all have capability of taking on students, on an individual basis, in our activities, and that we should be doing that, giving them those extra opportunities. And so one thing that we learned, our research team, our mentoring team learned from the research experience and mentoring program was that a lot of these things can actually be transposed into a one-on-one type of opportunity. And so the NSF actually awarded us an eager to explore exactly that. How can an individual mentor have the same type of success without having to have an entire RU program or a fantastically complicated number of activities? And so we actually took, again, had IRB approval to collect critical thinking data, and so we're looking at, we can cross-match the professional development activities that we offered with the critical thinking data to see how the students changed over the course of the semester and then over the summer for those that participated in the summer experience, and we can cross-match that with the professional development activities to say, okay, these are the ones that are highly valuable to moving that pendulum toward the upper ends in critical thinking, and here are the ones that apparently were they were fine but really didn't seem to have impact in critical thinking. So anyway, the goal of that is to translate it to a single investigator model, because we all, think of the army of people that exist across the U.S. There are very few people that are involved in more formalized programs, but all of us, I think, at one time or another have had the opportunity to mentor at least an individual undergraduate student. So faculty incentives, I know I'm singing to the choir. I hope I'm singing to the choir. The first one, there is nothing like seeing the light bulbs go off, or go on, I should say, go on over someone's head when they learn something or they realize they know something that they can then talk about, give a presentation or a rapid fire or stand by a poster and answer questions. There's nothing more exciting as a mentor than seeing that moment and watching people, for me, watching the Cheryls of the world progress and get so excited about what they know and then turn around and all of a sudden they're mentoring their own students. It's also an opportunity to be inspired, because I can't tell you how many times a student asks me, sort of like a child, why? And there are things that I've taken for granted for years that I never really thought about, and the answer because or cause, and it caused me to think about things, and particularly working with people who were not in my own field, as they were sort of examining in their heads, how does this bio thing relate to my own field? They would ask the most interesting questions, and then there were so many opportunities to pursue those types of avenues, and that wouldn't have happened without those students standing there asking those seemingly simple questions. And so I would claim it's an opportunity to get involved in other things, and I gave you a couple of examples to do: engineering and science education, STEM outreach, but it could be just as simple as another type of creative avenue that really is just another angle and a potential new collaboration. Selfishly, from a business perspective, it is an awesome way to find graduate students. And for you and the undergraduates, it's an awesome way to find out what you want to do. But that's the subject of the next slide, so get into that. Developing new projects, new course modules, also completing ongoing projects. There's often little pieces that aren't quite enough for a thesis or a dissertation, but they're perfect for an undergraduate to really sink their teeth into, and the right amount, bite-sized amount of information to be able to pursue. All right, need I say more? In purple, what are you waiting for? Student incentives. All right, Carrie and others in the crowd. Discovering new areas of interest. I've always said, and did we have 100% success rate in all of our programs and convincing people that they wanted to go on to graduate school or they wanted to become an expert in their technical field? No, I can think of there's one young lady who told me this was a fantastic experience. She was part of our RU program. She said, but I know now this is not what I want to do. And that's equally good. I would much rather she spent the summer expanding her mind and then deciding I don't want to make a life commitment to that. Rather than graduating from school thinking that, oh, here's the pressure, I need to do this, and then discovering I don't like this at all. She, by the way, is now a lawyer, and so she fully admits that critical thinking and that way of logically approaching things and coming up with standard operating procedures and being very detail-oriented has been an enormous background for her, and we still stay in touch. I may need her one day, hope not, but I would like to think the world benefited from having somebody who had that experience, and it was just as good to discover science wasn't what she wanted to do. Learning new concepts, learning to work on teams with different people, learning to communicate differently, so different technical fields. Sometimes, and this is directed toward the students, sometimes we faculty forget, we've known our language for years and we forget that, not everybody understands what a DSC is. This is my own acronym, my own field, and we forget that we need to distill our language and talk in terms that somebody who's not been standing next to us for 15 years can understand. And so it's a great opportunity to learn different languages, so to speak, and different cultures of different disciplines. It's also an awesome opportunity to solve ill-defined problems, because nowhere on the globe are there problems that are perfectly tied up like you find in a textbook. You have a textbook, there are homework problems in the back, and then you have the solutions manual, and everything's very, it's easily solved, and everything falls right into place, and there's a perfect answer. Well, the real world isn't like that. It's messy. It's it's often ill-defined. It's a little ugly at times, and so it's an opportunity, being involved in RSCAD, to experience that and to feel comfortable with that. That's normal. That's not me being a failure because I don't get it. There must be something that I'm missing. That's me experiencing the real world, and that's knowing that that's the way the real world is, and this is quite normal to feel that I have to wrestle, and then I have to feel frustrated sometimes with that. So need I say more, Carrie, on behalf of the undergrads? What are you waiting for? All right, so this is I want to impress upon those of you who are students, don't pull the Karen, as I call it, and hide in the corner and don't ask for opportunities. Faculty members, sometimes we get wrapped around the axle with whatever's going on in our lives, and we're not thinking quite clearly to extend an invitation, so don't wait for an invitation to be extended. Go and ask, and you can ask different people. There are staff members, there are graduate students that there are other undergraduates, there are faculty, and don't fear a no. One of my mentors, one day he was laughing really hard because he'd just gotten a no from somebody. He'd asked him for money, got a no, and he said, "Karen, I get a lot of no's in a day." He said, "because I ask a lot of questions." Ah, he was really excited with himself that, you're going to get a certain percentage of no's, but if you don't ask the question, you might as well have gotten a no. You're not going to advance with that. So don't fear the no. What you should, though, and again, this is directed toward the students, what you should understand is the expectations and the motivations of a faculty member. A faculty member is volunteering their time, to work on projects outside the bounds of their class, and they have the option, with their own RSCAD portfolio of, where they want to devote their time. So it's to a large extent, it's a volunteer operation, and they want to know that you are going to be diligent, you're going to follow the rules, you're going to be enthusiastic, you're going to be reliable, dependable, you're going to be in the moment and present and excited to be there. And so understanding that point and understanding their expectations is key, to making sure it's a good relationship and good things come out of it. I always recommend that you ask for regular interaction, so whether that's a 15-minute meeting every other week or a 5-minute email exchange, or whatever it is, there needs to be some interaction so that you're getting feedback and that they know you exist. Credit, experience, or money, and I know we're moving toward the credit opportunity, and so that's exciting too. And I may have tomatoes thrown at me for saying this, but I think you should seek seek K-State summer opportunities, but I also think it's very important to seek opportunities elsewhere. We had Clemson University students on our campus over the summer. I could not have been more delighted. They went back to Clemson. They brought a K-State perspective. They were excited. They'd spent the summer in Manhattan. Not only are they now walking marketing agents for us, but they are also wiser because they have learned things here that they could not have learned on the campus back in Clemson. And so that's the type of thing. You should be seeking opportunities. Again, what a great opportunity to try out a different geographic region, a different, maybe slightly different technical opportunity, so that you have those options and you have those ideas in your head when you finish up and you have to make your next move. What am I going to do? And now you have all kinds of options that you've thought about. So those are toward the faculty. Again, we need to seek out people, not hope they'll wander by our offices. And I know that's hard because we all get very busy, but we really need to think of those diamonds in the rough in particular that aren't going to wander by the office, and know that those individuals, could be really big contributors and really need our help in finding their true potential. We need to provide clear expectations and goals. Again, the same thing flip-flopped, that we need to be direct and upfront about what our expectations are so that the students will succeed in the environment. Again, I'm just flip-flopping the student objectives, providing regular feedback, discussing, listening, credit, experience, or money, and help them to seek non-K-State summer opportunities. I can't tell you how many letters of recommendation I now write for different students trying to find those opportunities, and I write them because I've interacted with them directly, not because I viewed them, sitting in a chair over there and said, oh yeah, they behaved well in my class, or they got a, such and such grade in my class. It's because I know, what they've done outside the classroom and how they've performed in an RSCAD type of environment. So in sum, we all benefit. These are a couple pictures of some of the fun events. That's also the perk for, I would hope, for the students, but certainly for the faculty. On the left, this was a glow run that one of our undergraduate groups of students and graduate student mentors, we all gathered in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a midnight glow run, so we all dressed up and ran as a group, and it's just one of those things, you get to know your students a little bit better, your students get to know you, and it's part of that whole experience of building that continuum for them so that they are very comfortable, networking, pursuing these types of opportunities. The right-hand side, the lady in the gray suit on the here is our National Science Foundation program director who supported several of the programs. So she actually came on site and was blown away by the fact that the students were so comfortable in fielding questions, and the fact that they all had, there were so many different disciplines represented as well. So my take-home point, let's all agree we're going to ignite the passion for learning through undergraduate research, and that goes for the students as well as for us on the faculty and administrative side. I put the Twitter handle at the bottom, so shameless promotion of RSCAD and K-State Research Office. We will be announcing, Anita will be putting tweets out about the events this week. And so I can't say enough things. I'm truly, personally excited about this area. Again, I'm delighted that you have that we have an office that's dedicated to that. That's amazing to me, and I'm looking forward to plugging in as we find the opportunity to do so. And again, a big thank you for including me in the Awareness Week, and I'm delighted to help kick it off. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your words, and I believe you have a few minutes for some questions.
Sure, I'd be fine.
I've been mentoring for many years, and one of the biggest, I want to say, obstacles is the fact that you have to charge them money to do research credits. And I've had kids that wanted to do it and essentially couldn't afford to take the credits that way. And I was wondering, is there a way to somehow reduce the cost of those credits or eliminate it entirely for these students? Because it is a burden, especially with every year tuition goes up. If you want to do 3 credits of research, that's a pretty hefty sum.
Yeah, that's actually something that, and realize I've been here 6 weeks now, and so that is something that has come up a few times, and I'm coming from a different system where it's a different tuition system, so I'm becoming adjusted with the details of that. I do know certainly on the external funding side, yes, so NSF, for example, will cover the cost if you write that in of that type of thing. But yes, we need to examine how to do that more broad scale, because not everybody has, in fact, most people don't have external funding to be able to do that. Yeah, exactly. And for many of the students, again, the ones that I have worked with, many of them simply cannot afford that, and that actually came up. A couple of years ago, I realized that some of the there were lab fees that were being incurred that I didn't even know existed, and somebody pointed out to me, and they simply couldn't afford it.
Lab fees, because there's typically courses that are as a requirement, where it's an extracurricular thing.
Yeah.
Coming in, it makes it very difficult for there are kids, there are special programs that will pay for some of those here. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's every student, but there are those students, like you said, who sort of don't ask.
Right, exactly.
They are very timid,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that's quite a.
Yes, no, it is, and that is on my list because it's come up several times.
We are actually having those discussions across campus now to address that very issue of credit hours and whether we can have some variable options for different situations.
And I guess I should have repeated the question because I forgot you're not sitting near the microphone. We have an audience. No. So the question, so to go in reverse, was about the fees incurred, or tuition, not fees, but tuition incurred because of taking on a credit or more of research classes. And so Anita provided that there are discussions looking at some options for potentially solving that.
In the College of Arts and Sciences, for their research program, they have a 0 credit option, which I don't know what that does to a student's transcript,
Does nothing for the.
other than the fact that it's listed, you know, that they can take it for 0 credit. It's not graded.
But a lot of times students need those extra 3 credits or something to fulfill their degree requirement. And so they do have to pay for those.
The 0 credit option enables us to keep track of who's doing undergrad research, because some students are getting paid, so they wouldn't be counted, and it's a way to help the university have a better feel for what it's
See,
doing.
that's something I was completely unaware of. I mean, I've had probably 90 students over my time here. I don't think we've ever signed up for 0
Well,
credits.
Arts and Sciences, it's a year old, and the rest of the colleges are
Okay,
working
so it
on
is just a year old.
and are working on the paperwork right now with Anita's office.
So would that tie in with something like kids who take like the Terry Johnson research thing, would they automatically pick that up with that type
Correct.
of thing?
So again, I'm going to repeat the question. The question was about 0 credit courses. Arts and Sciences has a 0 credit option, and the comment was made that currently that can be used for tracking to know who's signed up and who isn't. But again, there's discussion about potential for grades, and then also the tuition question, which was raised earlier. And the other colleges are working on providing a similar option.
I'm not sure if this has been brought up, but I'm an out-of-state student, so like
It's even more
the fact
expensive.
that I would have to pay to get credit to do research is obscene, because I went to UNC actually before I came here, so that's a very foreign thing for me. So I don't know.
part of the discussion.
Yeah, I think that should definitely be brought up.
Are there students involved in that discussion? Because that could be a good perspective to add to,
Not at this point.
yeah. So anytime you try to change something or add it, there are always angles that you haven't thought of, so it's good hearing your perspective. So the question there was about out-of-state tuition, and again, providing a barrier for doing research. Thought I saw a hand over here.
What are your thoughts on igniting this passion for research and extending it to our online students?
Yeah, so we actually had some good conversation about that this morning, and absolutely, I have personally advised many students that have been working on site, and there are different categories of online students, but companies more and more are interested in even paying tuition for a student to be able to complete a degree, and so research can be a part of that, even if it's a non-thesis master's type of opportunity, also undergraduates as well. And so there are plenty of ways, and again, my experience has been, particularly with working with students who are on site at a company, in working with the company to provide research opportunities. So the opportunity becomes part of their job, and so they're not necessarily coming, in most cases they're not traveling to campus, they're actually working on something that's a part of their job, but it's being led by a faculty member that keeps it in line with the academic requirements. It's an awesome opportunity, and I haven't looked, again, 6 weeks on the job, haven't looked at the details of the committee makeup on the graduate side, but for graduate students, there's an awesome opportunity. If you have adjunct faculty who have been approved by departments, then you can have co-advising between a person who's on site, a supervisor at a company, one who's been approved for adjunct faculty status, and the advisor, faculty advisor who's the academic at the institution. And it is enormously worthwhile because you can actually spawn new collaborations and new opportunities beyond the bounds of that project. Obviously, students who are not involved in, they're not working, they're just, for whatever reason, taking class and it's not part of their job, that's usually on a one-on-one basis, but there are plenty of opportunities to be able to provide them with research opportunities too. And it's under-tapped. We haven't been doing a lot of that, and it's time that we did. Yeah.
Excuse me, my question was along the gentleman talks about the zero credit research hours. The program I work with is McNair Scholars Program.
Right.
And we have both first generation and low income
Mm-hmm.
students. And we're currently doing a seminar that we charge them tuition if they want credit. So there's a need, or they could do zero credit. There's a need to try to, I unsuccessfully tried to get the tuition waived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they didn't want to start a precedent.
Right, right.
So, but if that's something we're visiting, am I hearing that, Anita?
We're looking at following arts and sciences lead and making it a campus-wide course within each college. Each college would have that course. And we're looking at various options to make it work, but one we're looking very closely at is variable credit from 0 to 3 credit hours, something like that.
Okay. So I won't repeat the question because it was, I'll simply say it was, again, about a question about zero credit and tuition.
But would that include special populations, like near people? I mean, I guess they would have to, that's a further.
All undergraduates.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the McNair people are well represented in the research area. They're not the group that's not getting the attention.
Well, I think, I mean,
It's a rural kid from, maybe a farm kid or something like that.
I think the issue applies to everybody.
It does. But I'm saying some groups are just getting a little more attention.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.